be on bar time.
Don't forget to get my good side.
Where's that?
On the back.
Pull up the
Little chairs. Michael, how you doing? Good, how are you? Good.
Every 10 minutes we have to.
All right, it's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we're lacking a flag, but nevertheless, I think we'll just face this direction, which is more or less towards the city's flagpole. So I ask everyone to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're meeting here, by the way, because the city has a major event going on next door, so apologize for the cramped conditions, but this is what we have. So I note the presence of a quorum and would move to the first item of business, ask for the approval of the regular agenda, which has the usual items and 5 unfinished business items and then 1 new business in the usual report. So are there any questions, comments, modifications, deletions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the?
I would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, ask for approval of the motion to approve the regular agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is agreed to. Approval of the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of minutes, approval of the invoices paid, and review of the treasurer's report. Now give everyone a short time to review, refresh what the report, content of the reports. And when completed, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded into the further discussion. Do we want to pause for a short time here so we don't rush through this? Okay, so moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion is agreed to. Public comment. Anyone?
I have a public comment. I would like to publicly thank the firefighters for coming out and getting my neighbor into her apartment. They were professional. They did a great job. They also got their into it suite.
Okay, thanks, Al. Did you know what shift it was? You know the firefighters by name? Or?
Sure.
Well, you want to mention their names? And
Sure. It was Ian and the captain.
thank you. Any other comment? Okay, hearing none. On to the chief's report. Chief Fair.
A couple things I'd like to just point out. One, we discussed a while back about an OSHA complaint that was filed, and in the packet you'll also find a letter from OSHA. It says basically there was, they found no safety violations, so they gave us a clean bill of health. And then the other thing is I'd just like to recognize 2 firefighters, and that was a memo that was provided by Captain Bazar. There's 2 of his shift members on Wednesday, October 1st. Members of Shift 2, Scott Bazar, Bill Rigner, Eric Stanley, were dispatched to the Arctic Coliseum parking lot for a man in cardiac arrest. We arrived with HVA and took over CPR from a bystander that was already on the scene together. We continued CPR for the next 20 minutes. We were able to get pulses back, and by the time the ambulance reached the Udon Hospital, the patient was alert and talking. Through the duration of the call, Bill and Eric, along with the HVA crew, performed exceptionally well, and together we were able to save this gentleman's life. Although members of CAFA have been faced with these circumstances plenty of times before, it's not very often that we get the outcome that we hope for. On this night, however, this man's life was saved through the great teamwork of all involved. With that being said, I feel they deserve CAFA's recognition and honoring them for their life-saving efforts and difference that was made, not only for the man's life that was spared, but for his family members as well. Eric and Bill are a pleasure to work with, and I look forward to working with them in the future. Additionally, I would ask that you place a copy of this letter in Bill and Eric's permanent file. So I would just like to publicly recognize those individuals for their work, and it's, you know, it's easy to say that this is what they do, but it's not very often that you get to see this kind of a positive result from your hard work. So, other than that, we had our annual open house. That we always seem to get lucky on the weather, and it was a beautiful day. We had a good turnout, so it was well attended, and it was a very nice program. So.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Before, trustee Osborne, just want to say, like, speaking for the board, we absolutely commend Captain Baser and his team. Scott needs to be included in this as well.
Agreed.
And this is what it's all about, and the system works, and you know, we are in the business of saving lives, and this is something that doesn't just happen. And let's not forget that. I mean, sometimes we get wrapped up in minutia of how to get things done, but let's not forget that when the rubber meets the road, or whatever metaphor you want to use, that we're there and able to do the job. So, Tom, do you have a comment?
The incident started with civilian intervention of CPR and AED from the ice rink, and I think it would behoove us to publicly thank them. I know they zapped them like 4 or 5 times before anybody got there. So, and attaboy, I will furnish you. I'll furnish you with contact info, and maybe we can
Okay.
give them a certificate suitable for framing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those are expensive units, and there's maintenance requirements on them, and for,
Yes.
you know, for business to
Gotta bring it
Well,
in.
invest in that.
Yes. Yes, there is.
And I think,
Here
and
from
I
the
think
board
it
there.
promotes the fact that other businesses may wanna invest in that too.
Right.
You know,
Well, and what it really comes down to also is the quicker you get intervention, and we know public intervention, as soon as it happens, the better the chances of the outcome are, so.
As a matter of fact, I've heard HVA say that it's only the cardiac incidences that the delay time in arrival isn't a factor in survivability. I don't know if it's true. There's a matter of comfort, of course, so we want to get there as soon as possible, but it's the heart-related things that time matters, so. Getting back to the OSHA report, I noticed they referred to based on our response.
Yes.
I don't know that we've seen that. Could you describe what that was, basically? Just,
Sure, and I can get you I can certainly get you a copy of that as well. And actually Captain Sarovi was the one that responded to it, because he's kind of our OSHA compliance guy. And he basically took each of those individual complaints and explained in great detail what we had done to really prevent any hazards. One of the issues was CO, and they did CO monitoring in the station, and they provided that detail to OSHA, and so it was, it's probably better I get you a copy of
Okay,
the actual, and you can kind of see what
fair enough.
how he responded to it.
I guess the only concern I have is this, is the safety and health is not now in jeopardy, and you could infer from that, that safety and health was in jeopardy previously, is that accurate?
No, I don't think it was, I think the allegation was that it was, and it's not founded. There was no, health or safety
It
related
was
issues.
never,
so-
health and safety was never in jeopardy?
Right.
Okay, good. Any other comments from the board on the chief's report? I have one, personally I have one more. You know, we're working with USource to outsource our HR stuff. And they, in your first paragraph, you're saying that they have implemented a plan for improvements as we move forward. Is this a sort of thing that we could, you could share with the board? Maybe not, you know, instantaneously, but I'd be curious as to what, if they have a plan, what it looks like.
Well, right now, it's primarily centered around payroll. They have, they came in with their staff, and they looked at our system that we had in place, and have been working on interfacing that so that we can move towards more of electronic, making it accessible to all the employees so that they can go on and monitor their payroll, their tax commitments and all those kinds of things. So I mean, that's the more of an automated kind of progression, if you will, of our payroll system. So that's kind of where they've started, and the other area that they've started to work on is the audit. So they've taken all the personnel files, and they've been working on personnel files, and evaluating those. And then they've also been working on our healthcare, in terms of, you know, getting pricing and dealing with some of those issues. So there's, I guess that's kind of in a nutshell. There's a lot of things that they're currently working on and we're trying to progress on, so.
Would it be unreasonable to ask for, I mean, our accounting firms represented regularly here, did we, if, at no additional cost to CAFA, would it be useful to have regular reports from?
I
sources?
certainly can ask about that.
Is it, I don't know what the board's druthers would be on that, would that be something the board would?
At least quarterly.
Yeah, okay, let's make that a request, we don't need a motion,
Okay.
but just say the board, since the board is that, we would like reports at least quarterly on the status. Especially during this time, because there's a lot happening, we need to know about,
Yeah.
okay?
Yep, no problem.
Anything else on the chief's report? Okay. So going forward, into unfinished business, Lima Station, substation status.
The block work is complete, the trusses are up, the sheeting is on. I stopped yesterday and there was not anyone working down there yesterday. I can only assume they're getting ready to put shingles and whatnot on to finish up the roof before the weather sets in too much more on us. Chief and I had a discussion that both of us were in favor, as soon as Scott Cowarth is able to get the drawings and everything around for the interior work. Both of us were in favor of allowing Dexter Builders to do that also. One for the convenience of only having one contractor there, so you're not falling over somebody else's feet. The other being that if you have a foul weather day when you can't be doing your roofing or your siding or something outside, you can take your same crew and have them come inside and try and get us a jump start on the interior work. So I guess I would hope that the board would feel comfortable with that, even though we did not solicit any bids as of yet for the interior work, I think that's a logical way to go, to allow them to go ahead and just complete the entire project.
Comments on that? Everybody comfortable with that approach?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a completion date? estimate?
We do not as of this point in time, and I would hesitate to make a guesstimate. Jim and I are, yeah, it depends on Mother Nature. We're crossing our fingers and hoping perhaps by the first of the year at this point. And I've been optimistic before, I hope I'm not being optimistic now. But that's, that would be a goal to shoot for, would be by the first of the year to be able to occupy the building.
Scott said, Scott's working on drawing plans right now, the plans, interior plans, our plans. And he did not think that, you know, the first of the year was an unrealistic goal, so.
When we make the switch, which is not in the distant future anymore, is it just a turnkey, push-a-button operation about dispatch and coordination with the other area
Yeah, we'll
fire
have,
departments?
we will, yes, we will do all of the legwork ahead of time when we get to that point, yes.
When we
So
get to what
when we
point?
get, when we're ready to move in that building, then yes, it'll be turnkey.
And it's a fairly
Yes.
fairly short term,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
no extensive, and everybody knows what we're doing right, anyway, right? I mean, we're
Yes.
Dexter and, okay.
Yeah, yeah, we've had
I mean,
discussions with, I've had discussions with Dexter and Sile,
Yeah,
um,
we're in a month-to-month
So-
contract,
right, so.
okay. Anything else on the substation? Okay, good, sounds like we're making progress. Chief's review, this is sort of an informational thing to the extent,
Union
oh, sorry.
Ms. Kurt and that.
Union negotiation status, trustee Kozak.
All right, we are currently working on economic aspects of the contract, you know, versus the non-economic. We meet again this Thursday night, and,
Wednesday.
is it Wednesday night? Thank you.
Yeah.
For
The
those I
other,
brought it
the
up.
other Thursday.
Glad you said that.
And I don't think it'll be our last meeting, but we are in the final stretches,
Okay,
so that's good news.
so we could anticipate a contract for the board's review sometime early next year, or perhaps, okay. All right, great, look forward to that. Any comments from the board on status? Okay, thank you. Now, chief's review, this is more in the nature of information. We did have a closed session to discuss the sort of the overall scope of the chief's evaluation. And we'll need to compile that, and what I would suggest to the board is that and to the chief, is that we hold the actual review session in conjunction with our meeting next month. And Jim, this is, again, your call as to whether it's open or closed session.
Right.
But I would suggest that we hold it again at 8 o'clock. I mean, 8 o'clock is not great, but if, you know, that would be my first suggestion. If individuals want to hold it some other time, I'm open to that as well, but I would, thoughts of the board?
That's fine, I just set the alarm clock a little earlier.
My dog complains about the early hours, but we'll make it.
If we made it today, we'll be able to make it then, so. Okay, then I guess I'll entertain a motion to hold a special session for the purpose of conducting the chief's evaluation under Article A of the Open Meetings Act. On, what's the date?
Is it 16th, December 16th?
Sounds right. December 16th, December 15th, it says here. No, it is the 16th. 16th at 8 o'clock in the morning, and hopefully we'll be back across the street. And Jim, you can formally let me know later if you want it open or
Okay.
closed, okay? And again, you can revoke that anytime up to the actual meeting time,
Right.
so. Okay,
So moved.
so moved, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of holding a special session to conduct the chief's evaluation on the 16th of December at 8 o'clock, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is agreed to. Thank you. Renewal of the contract for the fire chief. My packet, not sure what happened. Some of the materials were duplicated and some of them were missing, like in my case, the contract itself was missing. What we want to do is talk about the contract, just to sum up for where we stand. It's initially a 5-year contract. We renewed it for 1 year last year. It expires essentially on the last day of February. So this is November. We have some time to go forward. What we want to do now is talk about having the process to go forward with a contract and what the broad terms of that contract might be. So with that, I'll open it for this general discussion about what the terms of that contract might be. Tom?
2-year contract,
Okay.
it's just my opinion, with goals and objectives for timeline, with a timeline for goals and objectives, I should say.
Is there support or opposition to that?
I would agree with that.
Linda, Kurt, thoughts?
I was more in favor of a 1-year contract, again, similar to what we did last time.
Okay, Linda?
Because of all the stuff going on and HR and all that, I would lean towards a 1 year, because we gotta get some things worked out here first.
Okay. Well, that makes it hard, doesn't it?
If I could make an additional comment,
Yes.
Rod?
Sure.
The reason I would side with Tom on a 2-year contract, in a 1-year period, it's very, very difficult with all the new things we have going on to really get a grip on all of that and put on a show, if you will, as to the benefits of that. Working at the speed of government as we're all accustomed to, it unfortunately just takes a little more time than that, which is why I would be in favor of a 2-year contract.
And for what it's worth, my thoughts are, I mean, ideally, we would like a longer term, but in view of all the changes that are ongoing, I think it would be injudicious for us to commit to that longer term. And there are a lot of things going on with the unionization and the substation, outsourcing HR. We're going to have extensive internal and external changes in the department. And as a board, and we've said this before, we need to hold a fairly close leash here. Now, it's not in the nature of fire authority boards to be able to hold close leases, but kind of the only control we have is the contract. So, but having said that, those processes will be taking place over the next year, so to have a period of time over which we can supervise and evaluate performance under those changes probably does require 2 years in my case. So I guess I would go for 2 years. So before we make any motions that we need to, let's talk about the process going forward. Is there anyone that would like to volunteer to take this, take the existing contract and modify it to go forward? I'll do it I'm asking if there's a volunteer. I'll be glad to take a volunteer.
That would be you,
That would be me, okay, fine.
by default.
I don't wanna get ahead of myself, but Jim, you certainly have a right to speak on this. I mean, you've heard the sense of the board. What are your thoughts?
I'm just gonna hold my thoughts for right now.
Okay. I mean, this is
Yeah.
not in any way an indictment of your, it's,
I agree, and the one thing I would agree with is, I would say the same thing. From my perspective, it should be at least a 2-year contract. because there are things in place that are going on, but, you have to have some stability at the
Right.
top as well, and, going year from year, I
Yeah.
don't think offers that
Year to year
stability.
is
It's no
right.
different than, probably negotiating a union
Right.
contract, so.
Yeah, and so I mean, obviously you would prefer long-term, but the 2 year is not.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I'm not sure we need a motion on this. What I will do, based on the board's concurrence, is prepare a draft contract based on a 2 year period of performance, and then we'll bring it back. I will submit it for legal review, should be straightforward, and then bring it back, probably in January for, board approval, and then we'll go forward with that. And I wanna make this clear for everyone present, the firefighters and the press, is that if this board wasn't happy with Chief Payer's performance, it would be a 0-year contract. It's just that there's so much that's happened over the past couple of years, and it's continuing to happen, and as a board, we feel it's incumbent on us to make sure that we track things closely, and that means short time frames and so on. And I hope that's clear to everyone. We don't want this to be taken in the wrong way. We think Chief Payer is a top-notch fire supervisor. And I speak for the board. Okay?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. All right, 2015 CAFA budget. We have the latest revision in there. Jim has added some comments, or some calculations that I requested, but this again, remind everyone, this is the time in which we approve this budget, and then it's gonna go forward to each of the municipalities for their review and approval, and they come back to us. Okay, and we need to get this done today. Well, we need to get it to the board so they can approve it at their next meeting, which are generally early in the month. So, this is it. This is when we approve the budget, so. Who wants to start? Jim, do you have any additional comments on this?
No, I asked, just what I was done, if no one else could do it, but, this was one of the things we asked, HR company to put together as kind of a response to what Ryan asked for, and this just kind of goes through, and they basically, put a cost, the associated cost with all the various, fringes and all of those things, and came up with, again, a total, employee contribution, so it just breaks it out further, and that's, as I recall, what I was asked. Other than that, I haven't changed anything, because that was the only thing I was asked for.
Okay. Yeah, we did have a, Kurt, you want to?
Yeah, I've got one comment here. When I look at the 2014 budget, and, we make an assumption on what the contributions from the local units are gonna be. And when I look at the actual, January through October of 2014, we're showing that there's 117,000, almost 118,000 that we have not received. So when we create this budget and, and we put an assumption in there for what our income is, it seems like we need to be careful of that, especially in years past, if we've missed the income by 10%, then that means our.
This is based on the county's estimate of what the
Yes.
taxable revenue will be.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of the best we have, I guess.
and that's basically
Well,
what
yeah.
we work with as a township also, that's our best guess as to what's coming in, and that's what we work with, and it's typically very, very close.
Kurt makes a valid point, we gotta keep an eye on what the final numbers are.
And I don't think there's any more income coming in from Chelsea, Dexter, Lima, and Sylvan. As I watch it, as the year progresses, the contribution from Chelsea comes in mid-year,
Yeah.
and where the townships come in March. So really through October of 2014, where we are now, this is our income statement. And, it's 10% off. And if we just use that same assumption every year, we're off by 10% every year. Our revenue is, you know, projecting a high income doesn't do you much good. It puts you 10% over budget if you have a balanced budget.
However, you will find property values have gone up, and with the recent sales and recent new construction, there will be a somewhat of an increase.
That line item 0660, is at 83,000. And I think what's happening there is the county sends us a check for back taxes that weren't paid. Those were made up. And we're showing that in other income, which is, you know, probably not an accurate way to reflect it. It almost would be nice, and I don't know if that level of detail comes along with that check, how much of it's from Sylvan, how much of it's from Linden, and it, you know, should go up in there so we can reconcile the differences and, you know, and then in future, when you're projecting budgets, then, you know, maybe it's not 10%, it's 5% less revenue, and that would give us a better indication of what's happening with our income versus expenses.
Any comments, John?
We don't have a breakdown on what we receive in our office. I don't know if the county provides something. If they do, I mean, we can certainly classify that accordingly, but I think they just give it to you as a lump sum. At least that's how we've seen it. So unfortunately, that's really the best presentation at this point, unless we can get some more detail from the county.
Okay. Anything else for?
In the proposed budget, we've got the chief's vehicle allowance, and, you know, the proposal is that be rolled into his salary. And, you know, again, I'd be opposed to that. You know, when we looked at it, it being 8,000 last year, you know, some of us questioned whether or not that is the right number. And we thought it should be somewhat less than that. And, you know, we talked about maybe having the chief track his mileage, and we didn't want that an administrative nightmare. But if it gets us to the right number, you know, then it's worth it. Just to flatly roll that over into wages, you know, to me is a red flag.
Let's talk about that. Is there anyone want to speak to that? Any other issues? Everybody concur with
Well,
that?
I agree with the vehicle allowance. If you're gonna give a vehicle allowance, it's for a reason.
And if we're taking it away, we
You
need.
take it away and roll it into the salary, then I mean, that's not the purpose of that line item.
I thought in previous discussions several months ago that we had come upon the agreement that while $8,000 was probably not totally accurate as a vehicle allowance, I thought we had made the decision at that point that it was a vehicle allowance, other compensation, it was part of his package. So at that point, to simplify the line items and what have you, I thought at that point in time, we agreed just to roll that into wages and do away with the vehicle allowance line item. Does anyone else remember that, or am I making that up?
No, that's
Yeah.
the reason I did that.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
Right, but I guess the point is, this is the implementation of that.
Correct.
And I don't know that we moved anything there, but this is, when we moved this budget, to approve this budget, we're going to make that, put that in concrete, so. I think Kurt makes a good point, but you gotta remember, this is, you know, we're trying to tune and move, you know, a running engine here, and this is the way we've been doing the chief's compensation. And if the board had said from the get-go, okay, you need to tell us what your mileage is and the parking fees and all the rest of that administrative trivia, and then we'll reimburse you for that, that would be one thing. That's not what we did. We said, we think it's gonna be about this, and here's the money that you get. And if it's more than that, you eat it. If it's less than that, you know, it's a benefit. And frankly, we don't think the worry of having to, you know, count the miles is worth it. And if we do anything else, and I think this is the logic we used before, we're in effect decreasing his compensation package. This is a package that the boards and previous boards have negotiated with him, and if we're starting off with a blank slate, I'm 100% with you, Kurt, but from going forward, I think we roll it all together and go forward.
Right, there's one additional concern I have, and that is in the chief's contract, it says that if the firefighters get a pay raise, then he will also get at least that pay raise. And if you roll this 8,000 into his current wages, then you're gonna give him a pay raise on that vehicle allowance also.
Okay.
Where if you keep it separate, I would argue the pay increase that he gets is only against his
I
wages.
see your
True
point.
enough,
Yeah.
but the total compensation package, which is what we need to look at, because he gets these dollars, this is not a benefit that, you know, like healthcare where some third party is paid. This ends up in his paycheck. So you know, you can call it whatever you want, but it looks the same at the end of the day with the
But
money.
couldn't it go in as a separate line item, broken down, so that if there's a pay raise, it's against salary, not a whole?
Oh, I see,
check.
okay, I see
A
the
separate
point. Is that the
line item.
point?
Yeah.
So we're
that
talking about
we're not
2%
paying
of 8,000?
Raises on a vehicle allowance.
Okay, all right. I guess I see that.
It can show up on your paycheck as separate.
Yeah. I guess I mean, we're talking what? $160 here?
Well, what was the reason for getting rid of the vehicle allowance and rolling it in?
Because we don't do it that way. We don't really, we're saying, you know, we're not in the business of, the chief provides his own transportation, he's willing to do that under the conditions of employment, right? I mean, that's the going forward. And I think it's a simplification thing. Is that, I mean, otherwise,
As it was brought up before.
yes.
See, if at some point in the future, if we had to really squeeze the budget and look at the numbers, you'd look at the vehicle allowance and say, well, is that the right number? Maybe it should be something different. So, you know, there's a case for keeping it separate.
I guess, what I would ask is, let's mark that down as a change. Well, let's,
'Cause he can
I
still
guess
be
I would
paid.
entertain a motion to modify the draft budget to reinsert the $8,000 as part of the chief's vehicle allowance. And I will entertain a motion of that.
I was so moved.
Okay, moved, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Okay, so further discussion, so,
Who seconded it?
Tom.
Tom,
So what we're doing is making a change to the draft budget. We're not approving the final budget now. We'll do these one by one. So we'll make this, we'll vote on this change, and then we'll still have to look at the budget as a whole. So is there further discussion on this move to redo the way the chief's vehicle allowance is accounted for and put the $8,000 back in? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of, try to be clear here, all those in favor of reinserting $8,000 under line item 3-702.6, wages, chief vehicle allowance of $8,000 to be taken from wages. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, nay. So motion is agreed to. All right, so we put $8,000 back in. Okay. Other questions, comments on the budget? I do have one while we're waiting for, I guess this is my confusion, Jim, on where we stand on funding our trucks, their equipment. Now, we had an extensive discussion last month, if memory serves, which it may not, but in going forward with the millage for capital equipment, I frankly had maybe the misapprehension that we were not funding trucks, but we are. We have $174,000 for the truck fund, which is
Right.
about where it needs to be. So, I guess it was just my misunderstanding, was it not? I mean, this has always been in here.
Yes, yes.
So can you tell me briefly why we're talking about we'll be talking about a millage in the next year? If we're funding it at this level, which is kind of where it needs to be.
I mean, the big reason is if we had the almost $175,000, not in the truck fund, it would open up other areas that we've kind of had a pinch on, kind of like, well, our capital line item, for example, right now we need to buy air packs.
Okay.
We're in need of air packs, and, I mean, that's, almost $300,000. We're in need of hose, we're in need of, then there's nothing being put aside then for truck replacement.
Well,
and
and isn't
those
that-
kinds of things.
I mean, in the long term, if we're funding it roughly, it depends on circumstances, but roughly $150,000, that should be adequate for maintaining our truck fleet in the long term.
No, all the truck fund is all we're doing is making the payments. We're paying on 3 trucks
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, that's,
And those funds are all committed to payments.
We have no need of additional trucks at this point.
As we
Correct.
stand today, no.
That's right, and as time goes forward, those leases are paid off and those funds are freed up for future investment in equipment. We had this discussion last time, and,
But it's not simply just trucks though. I mean,
okay, but let's confine it to trucks for the moment. I mean, do we need more than?
We don't need any fire engines as we sit here today. The one vehicle, I mean, that we are gonna have to look at replacing here in the near future is our 2001 Excursion that the undercarriage is rusting out of. So at some point in time, we're gonna have to, that rescue truck is gonna have to be replaced. Does it need to be replaced today? No, but it's certainly one of those things when we're looking at, making projections.
All right, look, I thought I shared this with you. This is based on what you gave us before about our current trucks and when we need to replace them. And I used the numbers that you gave us, and there are two, this is sort of the net balance of the fund based on 2 hypotheses. One is 100,000 per year investment, and the other is 125. Now, that's actually quite a lot lower than 175. But you see, at 125%, and lower is better, because this is, net costs, is that 125 gets us the trucks we need for the long term. And for long-term planning, this is, probably an acceptable level of analysis. I mean, at least as a first cut. This is where I am in terms of trying to get a grip on where we need to be long-term. I mean, this is really important. And if it's.
And I'm okay, but
Did you have a comment? Tom?
I think I'm just confused, I guess, because what is in the budget is just purely truck payments. The first truck that will be paid off is the tanker, and that's in 2016. 2016, the tanker is paid off, and that is, without going back, it's 65,000-ish in 2016. And then the next truck is 2020, that it'll be paid off.
But that,
So,
Tom,
What you have to do is, you have to depreciate these vehicles each year. And that depreciation has to be in your budget for replacement. And that's what the program that we worked on in Ann Arbor and came up with their fleet people. We depreciated every car, every truck, everything. And I think that until we have a depreciation schedule for the fleet, we have no idea what we need.
let me, in effect, what we're assuming here is that we do have a depreciation schedule that goes from 100% to 0% over the lifetime of that vehicle. And Jim has identified when those vehicles need to be purchased. That's our depreciation schedule. We don't carry in our budget as an asset. That's not what this is about planning, this is not about assessing our net worth. So I would argue that there is, in effect, we do take into effect the fact that vehicles wear out and we need to buy new ones, which is what depreciation is supposed to tell you.
But I would like to see specific figures per vehicle.
Wouldn't that be more?
Yeah, and that money is put
It
aside.
belongs in the audit more than the
Yeah.
budget.
Right.
The
This is a
auditor
key-
would.
yes.
would-
But I think what you're saying is that when you depreciate it, there's X amount of dollars that are put aside in a vehicle replacement fund, so that when you get to that depreciation level, then, I mean, you're basically putting that truck, selling that truck and replacing it, so,
Correct.
yes.
Funding it forward, basically.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
Right.
we look back at, several pieces of equipment I can remember, the old tower and, the old Ford tanker that were basically sold for scrap. You couldn't
Right.
sell them to anybody else, so, you know, they.
Nevertheless, I mean, I don't, there are several ways you can do this, but in terms of going forward, I don't, you know, both from a qualitative perspective, this is, you know, we've got $175,000 here. We don't have any immediate truck needs. Some of our trucks are coming off lease, so that will free up additional funds that when we need to buy the new trucks, I mean, frankly, when we look at these numbers, we do need significant amount of additional funding starting now. And that's why I was very concerned, because in my head, I didn't see this number for whatever reason. But we can do the depreciation, but that's not a budget thing, that's an audit sort of thing about what our net worth is, which really frankly doesn't impact this question.
The budget, yes.
Well, maybe I'm not hearing the question right. You're questioning whether we need that additional millage
Well,
or additional funding to this 175.
exactly, yes.
Okay. I would think that in order to justify that 175, be it too much or not enough, you have to do an audit of,
I don't
put a
agree.
price tag on
I
it.
don't agree. Our current plan is that we're gonna keep those trucks until they wear out and sell them for scrap, okay?
Right.
That's the depreciation. Now, if you wanna assume that at the end of the day, they're going to be worth 10% of their current value, fine, more power to you. If you wanna go to that next level of analysis, I don't think it's gonna change the bottom line, because frankly, these are all wags. But I just wanted someone to show me, give me a ROM estimate of, if it's true that we're at 125,000 that we need to maintain our fleet in the long term. There is some number, folks, in the long term, we will need to spend to keep our fleet viable. I'm thinking it's around 125. If that's an acceptable, you know, estimate within 10%, then we've got 175 in the budget. That means there's 50,000 that's available for air packs, say.
Well, I guess my question
Right now, this is the actual lease
is
payment.
your,
that's just,
That's payments.
If that's the money we are setting aside in this, we're talking about out years, all right? We're okay on equipment this year, so we're not talking about this from this year's budget. But in the long term, if we're investing on the order of $175,000 each year, I maintain, the numbers I've seen, that is adequate for maintaining our equipment fleet with some left over.
If everything was paid off, that would be a very viable.
No, it doesn't, no, because we're making payments on, it takes into account the trucks we haven't paid off going forward.
And I guess it comes to a certain point too, Rod, of when you enter into wanting to purchase a new vehicle, do you wanna have cash on hand to be able to purchase that new vehicle? Or do we want to go into another 10 or 15-year program
Right.
of another lease purchase or rental? So there's that question to be asked too, along with the fact that the truck itself is not always just the issue. It's all the equipment on the truck with the air packs and the hoses and the pumps.
Then we need to discuss that. I agree, that's a legitimate question about, I mean, we have a lot of line items in this budget that refer to equipment, whether it's in equipment that individuals wear or things like
PPE
hoses. but frankly, there's something that, if we're talking about buying hoses as capital equipment, this just doesn't seem quite right to me.
I think it's 5 years.
That,
Hoses is a capital item. I mean, any budget I've ever done.
okay,
PPE I could see is expendable, but, hoses,
all
you know,
right, I'm just surprised.
hoses and air packs and stuff I would consider.
I was, you know, as, maybe we just need to segregate the equipment or the trucks, the major items from hoses.
I would have to go along with exactly what Tom is in, and maybe you go one step further, is you don't just do apparatus, but you take your capital items as well. For example, what is occurring now is, stuff that we used to basically use forever, they've put constraints on as far as, life expectancy. Turnout gear is a good example of that, and they've given us 10 years. Air packs is going to probably be the next one. If you analyze all of your capital needs and program them out and come up with a dollar figure, that should tell you, what you're gonna have to be looking at as far as, replacement,
Well,
future
then,
replacement and stuff.
what we need to do is to have those numbers, and we'll do the analysis. And maybe this is a question for the so-called millage, is to identify what, if we had unlimited lifetime on our hoses and turnout gear, and now we're 5 years, well, we can quantify what that replacement cost is, right?
Yes.
Well, we need to do that, and it's not about trucks, okay? I guess that's what I would say at this point. It's not about trucks, okay? And maybe for this budget, it doesn't matter anyway, because we're gonna presumably go with this number, unless there's objection, but I just wanted to make sure that from where I sit, going forward, this is an honest budget that takes care of the needs of the authority as we currently understand them. With the further understanding that going forward, we have additional constraints that are gonna be costly. We need to quantify those, and right now there's some, if 125 keeps us going with the major equipment, we do have some funds in there for other things that we need to buy, but Jim, can you, I realize this is not kind of where you wanna go, but do you see, A, my rationale, and B, do you have any major objections with this budget? You prepared this budget, so presumably this will take us through this year.
I don't have a problem with the budget the way it is, as far as the numbers go. I'm not sure I quite fully understand where you're going, because,
Okay.
with 175,000, that's just making the lease payments. However,
Okay.
I think that if we sit down and we go through the capital and look at our long-term needs as far as a capital millage, I think that's a separate deal. As far as the budget goes,
All right, fair enough.
as it stands today, so.
Okay. I think we're not gonna, we'll have to agree to disagree. It's, the reason we're only paying lease payments is that we don't need any more trucks at the moment, okay?
And I see your point as far as the truck fund is concerned, Rod. 2 years from now, we'll have whatever it was, 65,000 or whatever, all right, then that starts going into kitty, if you will.
Right.
And then when the next one's paid off, that goes in, and on and on and on, to try and help future fund some of these things. But the point being, when it comes time for a new $300,000 engine, there's not gonna be $300,000 in that account, certainly not. So here we go, what we gained on the apples, we're about to lose on the bananas, because when we do purchase a new vehicle, then we're back to square one, and we're back to just a lease payment line item with nothing else going in the kitty.
One of the things we need to look at as part of this analysis and preparation for the millage is what you said before, and that is, do we wanna go, does it make fiscal sense for us to buy things on credit or pay cash?
Well, honestly, in the long term, ideally, it makes sense to pay cash for it.
Unless we've gotta raise a millage to generate the funds that results in a spike in taxation.
True.
That's not gonna
True,
happen.
I agree with you
So
there,
sometimes you gotta buy things on credit.
I agree.
But I'll keep an open mind, I mean, this is just me talking, but, you know, there's a reason that you buy things on credit sometimes. And these
There
are
is.
presumably, anyway,
But ideally, let's say the new excursion, all right, we're gonna go out and spend $50,000 on a new excursion to replace the old one. Now, if we go out and pay cash for it, you bought it for $50,000. If we go out and pay credit on a 5-year or whatever program, now suddenly it's become a $60,000 or $65,000 vehicle. So,
true enough, but that analysis needs to take into account the fact that those out year dollars are not the same as current year dollars because of inflation, so. I don't, it's
Enough
true.
said.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Needless, we need, this is something we'll be spending, this is another thing that, you know, it's on Jim's plate, and, it's a serious thing going back and asking for an additional millage, and these are the kinds of questions we need to raise and have answered. Us jointly as a board, we're all working together on this, okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion, modifications on the budget? All right, well, I guess at this point I would entertain a motion to approve this budget for sending forward to the municipalities with the one change that we already made to this draft budget. Is there a motion?
I would make the motion to forward the proposed 2015 budget as amended to the incorporating municipalities for approval.
Is there a second? Seconded by Tom. Is there further discussion?
What's the mechanism, how do we do that? Do I,
Typically, Jim, how do you wanna do this time with Kim being, not
She can email it to everybody.
email it, she'll email it to your clerk?
okay.
And then,
Is that what?
there's our board meetings tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Whoops.
You've
You've got the penciled in as amended part.
We'll try and get it, I'll try and get it changed today.
At 7 tomorrow, otherwise it'd be a motion.
So you need it when do you need it by, Linda?
ASAP.
Okay.
The board packets are out, but it's whether they'll act on it that short a notice, whether you haven't had a chance to look at it. Otherwise, we meet the second Tuesday next month,
That would be fine.
which would be okay.
Actually,
That would be
that's-
But if I could get them at this board meeting, it might help.
Yeah.
In case they want more time to review
I
it.
will, try and
Okay.
make that happen.
Cause ours will be the second Monday of next month, and our
Ours is
packets
second.
is not going out yet, so.
Great, all right, excellent. Okay, so did we vote? We didn't vote, did we?
Didn't vote.
Yeah.
No, we
Didn't
didn't vote,
vote.
we had a
Okay, so
motion and a
motions,
second.
and any last call for discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the amended draft budget for approval, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is agreed to, thank you. Okay, new business bylaws, this will be pretty quick. Mine, for some reason got in the document backwards and upside down, I don't know if that was a hidden message, but,
No, that would've been me, so you can blame me.
I'm not blaming anybody.
Hopefully I didn't
reason-
screw anybody else's up.
Let me just, the reason for this is that, we follow a procedure here, I follow a procedure as chair, we have an agenda and we follow it, and, sometimes I'm pretty strict about what happens when. The issue is that we have I'm doing it because I try to follow Robert's rules and so on, and other guidelines about how to run meetings. But we have nothing that tells me that I have to do it this way, so I could do it any way I want it. So it seems to me we looked at this before, and we wanted to, the way you do that is through bylaws. Now, this is the set of bylaws that we looked at before, and I think it would be a good idea if we looked at these, and maybe and Linda's made, we were talking about it before the meeting, she's got a lot of excellent comments about simplifying this, and totally okay with that. I know there were some problems before, because there's some language from,
Should be chairperson, comma, secretary, there's no such thing as a secretary treasurer. So that's just
yeah,
a,
those kinds of
just
things.
a minor change.
So, I just wanted to bring this up as an action item that, not an a discussion item. And if anybody's got any heartburn with us, basically taking another look at these, revising them, and bringing them back for approval, now's the time. I mean, if everybody's gonna be against it, there's no point going forward, but I think it's better to have formal process in place rather than just wing it.
Didn't the attorneys also suggest that we had bylaws as well?
Yeah.
Has the attorney reviewed this?
No.
That should have.
I think he would.
I think he did review it.
I think the
Yes.
different colors in there are,
Right, yeah, it was.
I think it was reviewed at one
It
time,
was
that's been
reviewed.
what,
Right,
almost 2 years ago,
yeah, right.
give or take?
So if,
They got in here where the notice is only supposed to be posted in the fire station. It needs to be posted in the fire station and the municipalities, not just one location.
yes.
So there are things in here that aren't right.
so let's just, I don't know that we need a formal motion on this, I don't see anybody strongly objecting to this. Linda, can you
Needs some
communicate this to me somehow,
Mhm.
either electronically or make a copy, or just, if you wanna give me your packet or whatever. And, this is not something, this is on the routine pile, but, if anybody else has got any questions, let's do the following. Take a look at this, if you've got any issues with it, bring it back next month, and then next month, give me your changes, I'll implement them at that time, and then we'll go forward, okay? And I don't think we need a motion for that.
Yes, I had one question. We have a section in here, duties of the fire chief.
Right.
Seems like we wouldn't want that in there.
I agree. Considering everything we talked about today, we don't need it in another place.
You would take that right out.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah, right. Yeah, I looked this over before I put it in the,
How about CAFA board and fire chief relationship? Does that kind of go along with that?
yeah. I think so.
Do you remember
Yeah,
that too?
go right ahead, and again, we don't need to mark up the document in real time, but there were a lot of things in here that I looked at and said, you know what, we don't need to have that in there as well, so. This is, I'll come back with a real draft, or you'll give me input next time, come back with a real draft the meeting after, that's the one you look at, and then we'll go forward from that one.
It should be whittled down just to procedural
Exactly,
bylaws.
right, yeah, there are things in here like templates for this meeting,
Yes,
that
and
seem.
duties
Duties
of
of the
everybody on the
officers,
board and how
Exactly.
how the meeting proceeds and record keeping and so on and so forth,
Yep.
and that I can see is a good thing to have in there. But not trying to duplicate
Got it,
bits and pieces of the articles and
Yep.
contracts and everything else.
agreed, I think, yeah, agreed. Anybody else before the meeting? Okay. All right, so much for new business reports. My report, the only thing I wanna mention is that, with regard to, we're still waiting on a ROM estimate for repair on the main station. Pending that, we're keeping our fingers crossed. I did talk with, city manager Hannafin and indirectly with the city attorney Flintoff. And the city's position is essentially, this is a fire station, you guys are using it, it's really got nothing to do with us in terms of, help in repairing it. If the building were, irreparable, they say, okay, fine, that's it, you guys have to find another fire station, it's not up to us, so. We really can't rely on any support, any fiscal support from the city to repair the station. So,
Hasn't the downtown development authority paid for some,
no, let's get started on that first. It's,
paid for some things in the past, is that?
Yes. The DDA captures 70% of the village in the district, which turns out to be roughly $25,000. When the DDA and yours truly were still in speaking terms, I actually got them to agree to do certain things that you could construe as being within DDA's authority. And for example, the front, paving in front of the station. They basically paid for a big chunk of. DDA we had a council meeting last night, and we're raising the DDA funds to pay for the lawyering for the McCoy thing, so I don't have a lot of pity for the DDA, cause they get $450,000 to spend however they see fit. Nevertheless, they say it's all accounted for, that's not, they did it in the past, they're not gonna do it going forward. At least, well, I'm here for something that's a good reason to go forward. Anyway, that's,
So we're welcome to go to one of their meetings and on behalf of the
Okay.
building,
it's a public meeting.
ask for that some of the tax dollars being paid or go back into that structure.
Okay, good luck.
It's always worth a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frankly, I confess, I don't go to GDA meetings anymore, because there's no point, they don't, anything I say, it's sort of like with the council, anything I say, everybody automatically agrees with the other. Actually, that's
You-
interesting
you're
tactically,
advantage.
that something just occurred to me, sorry. But seriously, going forward, it's not that, identifying projects that fit that sweet spot are a little difficult. We could put potted plants up, but what's the point? But the DDA is under fiscal constraints right now, because we had them identify what they call discretionary funds that we are starting to spend now on the lawyering. All right, anybody else? To finish the thought on the station, so, Craig, we formed a committee, and I guess I'm saying
This
this
is
here.
under my report.
Okay, well, all right, did you have some additional discussions as well?
Well, I
'Cause I'm done, so go ahead.
have sent the information that was provided to us by the engineering firm. I contacted Kent Companies, Dean from there, who has, they've done a lot of work around town for us previously. They did some work out at the Sibley Road lift station. They did a bunch of pile work, support work for the sanitary and storm lines that go up through the teddy bear factory and up through that way. I contacted them, sent them all the information. They are going to get us a ballpark price, given the drawings and stuff, and I have not heard back from them yet.
Right.
I
Excellent.
discussed with, both you, Rod, and with Jim, the engineering firm was kind enough to send us, I believe it was 4, if not 5, companies that do this type of work. But we felt, since this company was familiar with town, familiar with the process, for a ballpark figure to get started with, and for you and I to begin discussions with the city or whatever, that I didn't wanna
Yeah.
burn up everybody's time
Sure.
until it came down to actually soliciting for bids for this.
Okay, I appreciate that. And there's so far, it's back of the envelope, no cost bids or estimates.
Correct,
Where there's
correct.
no
This
dollars.
will be a no-cost estimate from Kent Companies that
Okay.
will.
Yeah, I think the discussions with the city kind of are,
Moot point.
irrelevant at this point, yeah. So, but certainly, we need to follow this very closely with those numbers, so. But we'll have to do that as a board, I guess. Anything else?
No, that's it
Okay,
for me.
Secretary?
Nothing?
Mr. Okay, Tom?
I would like to put an asterisk on this budget pending outcome of union negotiations. And the only reason that I would, whether there's increases, decreases, line item shifts,
Right.
whatever, just so that everybody knows that there is this item still out there, so that they're not, if something does come up in January, they're not saying, well, why didn't we know about it?
How would we do that? How do we put an asterisk? I mean,
We just put a, kind of a, oh, by the way, kind of with the the budget, and I agree with you, because we really don't know what the outcome's gonna be. And it could, one way or the other, and, you know, when I put the budget together, I purely looked at numbers. I didn't,
Absolutely.
you know, I didn't try to,
You can.
and so,
Right.
we can write something, and I agree with you, to go with it to the townships, I think, and to the municipalities, that this is the approved budget,
Okay,
however, comma,
how about if we draft a cover letter, to go with the package that basically points out that it's always subject to change. This board can change the budget
Right.
at any time. But just pointing out that we anticipate the final settlement of the union contract will require changes to this budget.
Changes in line items.
Something simple, yeah.
yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so
Yes.
we'll do that. So
So there's no surprises.
Jim,
Right.
yeah, so if we could just informally ask Jim does the board want oversight into that letter?
I think it should come from the board.
Okay, so could you draft that letter, and does the board, do you wanna authorize me to approve it, or do you want, you guys all wanna see it? We can certainly have you see it, but we don't wanna have to meet again to approve this,
No,
since
just,
it's gotta go out by tomorrow. Right,
well, whoever drafts it, just put that asterisk in there.
just say it's
Just a
subject to
simple
change.
something that some line items are subject to change with pending union negotiations.
Okay, that works.
And,
Works for me.
and
All right.
leave it at that, so.
All right, so we'll leave, actually, if you can make that a motion, we'll approve it, and then it'll authorize me to sign it, given that language is in there, if that's the nature of the motion.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
You need me
Second
to
it.
restate that? Yeah. You always do that right after I forgot what I just said. Some line items within the budget may change due to pending union negotiations. However, the budget will remain balanced.
I guess, all right, so that's the motion, and you're okay with that?
I can't second it,
Oh, that's right.
Can't second.
no, not, yeah, I wouldn't wanna put the constraint that the budget will remain balanced,
We don't know that.
cause you
So
don't
we
know
can't
that.
put that on there?
Then strike that
Strike
portion
that,
of it.
okay. All right, friendly amendment, you can second it now?
But
Now I'll second
Okay.
it.
All right.
my theory being,
We certainly, as a goal,
you'll have to shuffle things around, cause
Right.
the money tree is not,
it's a
Fruitful.
finite resource, but, you know, it's,
Well, I agree
We
with you,
gotta do
but
what
I
we
don't
gotta
wanna
right.
put that in this
But
note.
it's-
right. Agreed 100%. Okay. Any further discussion? Let's see, we moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving a cover letter with the language as indicated to indicate changes may be coming if the union contract, when the union contract is negotiated, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is agreed to. Announcements, next meeting is on the 16th, I think is the correct date, at 9 o'clock, and presumably in this council chambers, and as we've seen, we will have an 8 o'clock meeting. There will be a special meeting to go to closed session to perform the chief's, if it's subject to the chief's concurrence, to actually carry out the performance evaluation. And then, anybody else, any announcements? Final public comment, anyone?
I have a comment. Over the past couple of months, I've heard a lot of discussion about the building and repairing the building. I have a couple concerns with that. The first is that I haven't heard any discussion over the ownership of the building. And fixing a building that we don't even own, especially the amount of money that you brought up,
Which
To
is
me,
a pie in the sky idea.
is to me, not owning a building and putting that kind of investment into it is a huge concern. Especially since the money that we would be investing in the building comes from not just City of Chelsea people, all the townships. Furthermore, on the second part to that is that the Articles of Incorporation discuss the requirement of having a main station in the city of Chelsea. They put that in there, and I think that constraint forces us, and for good reason, to keep one there, but on the same sense, they're gonna say, you have to stay in the city of Chelsea, but we're not gonna fix a building for you that we own. So, I guess to sum it all up is, it doesn't seem reasonable to ask somebody who doesn't own a building to repair for it, pay the repairs for it, and ask taxpayers who are putting money into in the townships to fund a building that the city of Chelsea owns.
And I think you may have not been here at a previous meeting, but we basically did have that discussion as a board of the ownership of the building. I believe it was last meeting,
It's
was it
still-
not, Rod?
I apologize, Augie, because I probably should have statused that is an issue. We need to formalize the relationship. I've had some discussions or emails back and forth with Flintoff as well. I agree, we need to formalize through a member, we decided, and we actually talked to our legal guy, we need to have a memorandum of understanding about what the terms of use are for that building. Now, let's keep in mind, Chelsea's charging us a big fat zero for the tenancy in that building, and never has charged us anything, so, it's, you know, the overall, I think it's been a mutually beneficial relationship. Nevertheless, points taken, I agree, it needs to be formalized. We're having, you know, the city of Chelsea doesn't see any issue with it, but as you know, our audit was dinged us, and the one item they dinged us on was the fact that we don't have a formal relationship with that building. So I basically agree with what you're saying. So, did you want to respond to that?
No, it's just, that's all I want, is there to be something.
Fair enough.
We're in agreement with your comments.
Anybody else? Vince?
Just wanna comment about the truck fund issue. I like the idea of having a capital equipment depreciation schedule. And I also feel that once you have that schedule and you know when things are going to be needed to be purchased, I think it's also a good idea to have a fund in place that has enough money, maybe not to purchase the whole piece of equipment, but at least put some money down at it. Because I can see what's gonna happen next year when the one payment goes away, all of a sudden that money is part of the general budget and it could end up being spent someplace else. So I like the idea of having a truck fund and a depreciation schedule.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Al,
Now,
The city of Chelsea has built into the articles that appear, but they don't wanna pay for any renovations to the building, and I think Captain's 100% correct. Be silly for this organization to put that kind of money into a building they don't own. Maybe it's time for the CAFA board to A, start looking for other locations, or B, ask the city council of Chelsea to relinquish the provision of the charter that the firehouse be in Chelsea.
I'd have to go back and look at that language. I'm not sure it restricts us. Basically, I think what the language says, and Augie, I think you probably looked at it more recently than myself, but it says if CAFA ceases to use this site, it reverts back to the city. I think that's what the language is. It doesn't require that CAFA occupy this place. But
Well, if it's gonna revert back to the city, then the indication is by that language that Kafka owns it.
no, it doesn't. I don't think it says revert.
Okay.
CAFA doesn't own this building. There's no, the name of the title of the deed is City of Chelsea.
Does the city of Chelsea think that much about keeping the fire station here?
Where else would you put it?
I don't know.
There was some discussion about, 3 or 4 years ago, putting it on Old 12.
And back during that time frame, what happened is, there was a long discussion about building a new station, staying where we're at. And, at that time, it was Mary Ann, Luann, and myself, I was at that meeting with city council, and they took a very strong position of not wanting to take and have any kind of a formal agreement with CAFA on the building. Their position was that night was, you're there, use it, as long as, you know. So, because they were talking about wanting a formal agreement or selling the building or coming up with some sort of an agreement where it locked the authority into the facility. They were very adamant, at least at that time, about not wanting to have any kind of a formal agreement, so.
Rod, I think we're still wise to get some numbers around for the actual cost of repair on that.
Oh,
And then-
absolutely.
And then still attempt some discussion with the city on where we stand with that.
We need to follow through on our ownership, the ownership issue. Chelsea will continue to own this, you know, that piece of land and building, fine and good, but we need an understanding of what the terms of I mean, if we wanted to set up a coffee shop in there and sell coffee, you know, are they gonna object to that? Don't know. But, we can't expect them to help us out if that building is gonna need to be substantially repaired. It's just not gonna happen.
However, I would still bring up the point that structural deficiency was there when it was Village of Chelsea Fire Department, and that's,
And that affects us how?
well,
I mean,
at
it's
this
the
point, it's kind of a moot point, but.
Well,
but-
there was never any consideration paid to the city of Chelsea for the use of that building that I'm aware of.
Correct, no, I'm not arguing that. What I'm saying is, we have the use of something that was broke when we got it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Worked pretty well for.
You know, that issue on that corner of the building has been ongoing for years and years and years.
But how does that impact, I mean, it was functional, it may not have been totally, you know, optimum, but it worked.
Exactly, I'm not arguing that.
All right, I think we're all on the same page.
I think we're-
So, I guess we're still in public contact, comment, anybody else? Last chance, all right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
That'd be me.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn, man.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
There's no reason seconded, for discussion, hearing none, all those in favor indicate, I think aye. Aye, opposed, same sign, we're adjourned, thank you.
Do not forget to change the date on the back sheet of your packets there, because
Yes.
it does say December 15th.
Who was on Saturday?
How you doing, John? Fire?
Oh, you know, you put.
Oh, I was the first.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think
That'd be-
that was a good stop.